The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
Today, we have an interview with Johnny Rose, formerly of the Hood County Sheriff's Office. And Johnny was a lieutenant in CID, and he's here in studio today to talk about some of the things that went on with him specifically in the Hood County Sheriff's Office. Thanks for coming in, Johnny Rose. We appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I want to first explain why I'm here today, because it grieves my heart to have to do this, because I've known Roger 25 years, and he was even Santa Claus to my older twin daughters when they were little. They're 30 now, but he came over to the house and played Santa Claus for them. So this grieves me to have to do this, because I really don't want to do it, but I feel like I owe it to the citizens of Hood County to tell them the truth. And I also know that I have 6 kids. So we adopted 4 last year. And I feel like I owe it to them to set a good example on doing what's right, even if it hurts to do what's right. And so that's why I'm doing this. And also, I know God is watching. So that's my reason why I'm here today. I've been at the sheriff's office 28 years and loved my job. I worked through the ranks. I was a dare officer in the 90s. And the last 16 years, I've been in CID, the last 15 as a supervisor running the Criminal Investigations Division. And I enjoyed what I do. It's stressful, being an officer yourself, you know how it is being in CID and at a department. But the last few years, Roger, I don't know what's going on with him. I think he's got some mental health issues going on, because he and I in 2013 were both in that shooting down the square.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that wasn't my first shooting. I was in one in 99, and that one really messed with my head. I dealt with a lot of anger, and so I understand where he's coming from if that's his issue. But got through that because of God. The second one, immediately turned to God, and through a short amount of time felt a lot better. I don't think he ever dealt with that. I think he just turned to work, and that's not a good plan when you're going through something crazy like that. They can teach you what to do and something like that.
Right.
They can't teach you how to behave and deal with it after the aftermath. Nobody trains for that.
No, and you talk about that, and I was involved in a couple shootings, and we, people died on the scene and whatnot. So you're right. There's a lot that goes along with that issue, and some officers deal with it another way.
Yeah. You basically have 2 choices: become bitter or become better. And that's what you do, one or the other. So I'm worried about him. And I want people to know I'm not here as a disgruntled employee. I'm here as a whistleblower, okay? I feel obligated to the citizens to let them know there's some things going on that's not right, and we need to address that issue. He's in a position, he's elected official, and there's certain things that you just can't do to him because he's elected.
Right.
And it's his kingdom, so to speak. Back in May, we got notice from the district attorney's office that they were going to have a high-profile felony trial. On the list, the witness list, and I'm not going to embarrass this employee, but this employee's been there a while and is part of the admin, and he had applied at a place, and basically, long story short, failed 2 polygraphs. So to me, that deals with his integrity. Didn't seem to bother the sheriff because he kept him on. Well, he was called as a witness, and this new DA we have, Ryan Sinclair, he didn't know this history. So I went to him and told him, hey, this is what happened. Is this Brady? Is this Brady material? And he said it could be. And the Brady rule, as you know, is important for police officers and prosecutors.
Right.
Okay. If we hide something or we hide the credibility of a witness and defense doesn't have it, the whole verdict can be overturned. Correct?
Correct. And the Brady case came from a 1963 Supreme Court case, and it has to do with exculpatory evidence. And you can bring up the officer that's going to testify, you can bring up their personnel file and what they've done or what they haven't done. And it could lead, credence to what the defense is going to do. So in 1963, yes, your officers have to be of good standing character in the department and moral character.
Yes, that's correct. And I always told my investigators when they came to work for me, above all, keep your integrity. No bad guy is worth your integrity.
Right.
You have to have your integrity. And so that was always been real important to me and important for the people that work for me. So that happened, and time went by, and probably a few weeks, and the sheriff found out I went to the DA about that. And he got upset during the conversation and said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Because I'm not hiding Brady material for anybody.
Right.
It's got to be said, and it's better that we say it in an office privately than this to come out during trial, which could,
The whole
trial.
case.
Yeah,
Right.
the whole case could fall apart."
Right.
After that, this was in July the 11th is when I did that Uvalde story. And
thank you. I want you to keep going, but I appreciate you putting that out. We actually did a video on your letter, and I thought it was it was an excellent letter. And a lot of people like that. A lot of people, they just want to see more people in public service doing what you did, and I appreciate what you did.
Well, thank you, and I felt led by God to do that, and I knew there was going to be some consequences. Anytime you brag about Jesus or try to do something for him, you're going to get attacked.
That's right.
And I knew it was coming, and even my wife said, "You sure you want to do this?" And I felt really led to do it. So I do that, and the next day he's okay with it. He even sent a response to the Star Telegram saying, he supported my prayer. And the next day, we'd received probably I'd received about 30 nasty emails, and dispatch was getting nasty calls. I don't know how many emails he received, but it was enough to get him really upset. He doesn't like negative attention, as elected officials are. But he came to me. I had an investigator in my office that day. This would have been like the 13th, I believe. And I'm talking to this investigator. Well, the sheriff comes up to the door, and I can tell he's really, really upset because I've seen that look before. And he's saying, we need to pull that story because of all the negative attention. And dispatch is getting a lot of calls, which makes their job hard. I told him, I said, "You've already supported me publicly, so don't waffle on this issue because it'll make it worse. Just stand your ground, and it'll blow over." He then said, which really shocked me, but I've heard him say it before. He said, "I am going to go postal, and I am going to pull my gun, and I'm going to shoot them all." And my investigator was in there, was kind of taken aback, and so was I. The investigator was so kind of shocked. He said, "Well, if you're going to go postal, give me a chance to get out of here." He said, "No, you're okay. You're doing a good job." So immediately we both knew it was directed towards me, and he left out of there. And I talked to this investigator, and he said, "Man, that was a direct threat towards you." He said, "Everybody knows what going postal means, And I'd heard him say this through the last few years. He'd get upset with elected officials. I'm going to shoot them. I'm going to go postal. He's making threats.
It's definitely wrong what he says about going postal and whatnot. Is there another example maybe you can give?
Yes, I've got several. He's done this to several people, and one example. There's actually two. I was working a job fair at the Justice Center. In fact, it was a day or so right before he threatened me, and he came in upset about a Republican. It was an executive Republican meeting, and he's mad at those elected officials, and he's saying he's wanting to shoot them and go postal on them, and just unrealistic stuff that's unbelievable that he would say stuff like this. Another example will be is there is a person that used to work at the sheriff's office and was in the administration. He threatened to blow his head off twice, and he finally got a job somewhere else. I think he's willing to come forward, but I don't want to mention his name until I get his blessing. But he actually told him twice that he was going to blow his head off, and so he started looking for another job and left.
Wow. From what I'm hearing, that's unexcusable.
Yes.
I mean, you don't do that. As a matter of fact, if that was somebody else on the streets,
we put people in jail for that.
Yes.
For making threats like that. It's not okay to break the law or feel like you're above the law, and it's not okay to be a bully at work. That's workplace violence when you're getting threatened.
Unreal.
He's the high sheriff. He's held at a higher standard. At the sheriff's office, the sheriff is like a dad. Your employees are like your kids, and you set the example, and yeah, you correct them when they do something wrong, but you also encourage them. But if you're living in a dysfunctional system, it makes it hard for the employees to do a good job because they're worried about him, throwing a fit. I mean, he's having trouble controlling his anger, and he throws things, breaks phones, smashes chairs, and it's just not a good place to be. And plus, it's damaged the county property, and it's just not a good example for everybody to see. It's toxic for the employees.
It would be toxic, most definitely in the threats and different way to handle it. I think you brought up earlier maybe the shooting and what occurred there in previous years, but there's no excuse for that. And when you're talking about a sheriff in Hood County, and you guys are at will and no civil service, right?
That's correct.
So in at will, no civil service, you could be let go. He could get rid of the whole department at any time. If you're under civil service, which I was in Fort Worth, and you were fired for either writing that letter or talking about the Brady, being truthful, the Brady versus Maryland in 63, there would be some kind of recourse, especially for you doing the right thing, especially during a trial, and you have an officer or admin or whoever it was that did not disclose what was going on. I mean, that is, to me, I kind of go back to that because that's the proper thing to do. Even if something happens to that defendant, you have to be honest as a peace officer.
Exactly. And something interesting, that investigator that was in my office, and I don't know the sheriff's intent or what he was trying to do, but that was the only employee that got 11% raise from the commissioners. They had to have an executive session over it, and Becky Kidd went in there with the sheriff, and I don't know what they were doing, but to me the optics on that looks terrible. That the employee that heard the threat gets 11% raise. Everybody else got 3 or 4%, and so to me that was just an interesting incident.
So there's some things definitely going on then behind the scenes within the sheriff's department. And I appreciate you coming in and talking about this. And I would kind of like to dig in a little bit deeper on the Brady decision. And when you went to, I guess, the DA, and how did that transpire now when it came back to the sheriff? You said he got mad and whatnot. What kind of led up to you being let go? Were you let go? Did you resign? How did that occur?
Basically, I kind of understood once I released that Brady material that he's upset, and my job is on the line. Okay, and then the story made it worse. The Uvalde story, and time plugs along, and I'm trying to hang in there because I'd like to do 2 more years, get do 30 at
Right.
county. It just, I've had to, it's hard to live like that when you may lose your job at any time. And so on a Thursday, the 22nd, September 22nd, I'm already at my house, and I get a call from the sheriff, and he's upset, which is not unusual, but he's upset about a case. Somebody had called, and he didn't really give a lot of details, but he's kind of rambling on, and then he says, "You're fired." In a 1-minute phone call, he fires me over the phone, and
Wow.
and I was shocked, and he wanted me to bring my stuff in that day. I said, "Hey, I've got my younger kids right now, and I can't take them up there for this.
Right.
I'll see you in the morning." But I dealt with the chief deputy. He wasn't there Friday morning when I turned my stuff in.
So then he fires you over the phone after 28 years.
After 28 years, yes.
There's some issues
Yes.
of what evidently he's going through, what the department is going through, and all the departments in the county, city, wherever. You're going to lose people in today's day and age.
Yes.
Because of pay, and they can move on to whether it's Parker County or Weatherford, the city, or Tarrant County or Fort Worth, and get more money. But sometimes it's not just about the money. Sometimes the leader, the elected official, has some issues, and you start losing a lot of people.
Yes.
And I'm concerned now over the years, whether it's in communications or wherever it is, that maybe people are leaving here not just for the money, but because of what the culture is in the department.
It's a toxic place, and the pay's always been crappy. I mean,
Right.
I've chose to stay here because my family's here, and I love this community, and so I've just kind of dealt with it. But a lot of times people don't leave their job; they leave their boss, and I think that's what's going on. He's a bully, and what concerns me, and he thinks he's above the law. He thinks he threatened people, and the Brady rule. He either doesn't understand that or he doesn't care. Either way, it's a problem.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's legally that's a big no.
He should have actually gone to you and said, "Whoa, thank you, Johnny, for stepping up and saying that," because first, whoever that admin was or is in question doesn't need to be anywhere near a trial, or at least get involved in that. And I have an opinion, if you have an officer that can't testify, then you don't need that officer on the department anyway.
Exactly, and he knew this issue,
Yep.
but yet he chose to keep him on. So I guess he didn't think it'd ever be a problem.
But you
It
can't have
wasn't
that.
because he was never called as a witness, but this time he was being called as a witness on a high-profile felony case.
So you can't, like I said, you can't have that, and that was the right thing to do. And there could be all kinds of lawsuits and defense. That opens up a whole new can of worms when that happens. So here you are, you write the letter, which I think was an excellent letter, and you might have had 30 emails or calls or whatever, but you had hundreds, thousands of people that were saying basically, "You did a great job, keep it up."
Yeah.
And that minority small that's going against
And
you.
most of that minority was from out of county, out of state,
Yep.
out of country. There was people from other countries, emailing nasty things. And so to me, for the most part, Hood County supported the issue. There might have been 2 emails from Hood County that I knew they were from Hood County, and that's it. The rest of them were just from other places that have no business getting into Hood County business.
By what you wrote, by what I know of you, and I don't know you well, you're a man of God. You're a man of your faith.
Yes.
And during this interview, I can tell that it's very hard for you to talk about it because of the people involved, but you're here to do the right thing for you and your family, and I think that's commendable because we don't have that much anymore.
Yeah. It's very important that I show my kids. I think that's the most important, that doing the right thing matters. You have to. Not only that, God expects us to do the right thing, and even if it's hard. And I don't like the situation I'm in. I mean, financially, I'm in a pinch. And the sheriff. That's what hurts too. Is the sheriff knew that my wife was in the medical community, and she was given because of the vaccine mandate. She quit her job. She got out. Well, she drives a bus now. Well, she don't make a whole lot driving a bus, but it helps the schedules flexible for our kids and stuff. So he knew we were financially in a bind, but that doesn't even cross his mind because I've got 4 kids. There's Aiden's 12, Avery is 11, Zoe's 10, Carter's 9, and then we also have my wife's mentally challenged aunt who's 60 who's living with us. So I've got a lot of people counting on me.
Yes, you do.
To bring in, pay the rent, I guess you could say.
That's right. Wow, I applaud you, Johnny, for doing the right thing, and I know that God is number one in your life, and to have a situation like this where there's definitely something wrong in the sheriff's department, and it starts at the top. How would you solve what's going on?
Well, it's complicated, but yet it's simple. Doing the right thing is the start, but patrol is the backbone of any agency, but CID's the brains of the operation, if that makes sense. They deal with the prosecutor and they deal with deputies. They're kind of in the middle, and they get a feel for both sides, and they help get that case through to the prosecutor, because that's where you want it to go to get prosecution, is with the prosecutor. There's different things I would tell them, and even my investigators would say, "Hey, this case is no good. I can't do anything with it." And if the victim complained, the sheriff would just go ballistic, and he'd have 2 or 3 people working on that case when it's a waste of resources, So I would initially say we need to quit wasting resources on cases that are no good.
Johnny, can you give me a couple of examples that what you're talking about in cases?
Yeah, there was an arrest made by patrol. I guess it's been 6 months ago, maybe a year, and as you know, there's a law that allows parents to use corporal punishment. It's only parents and teachers and different people that are allowed to use corporal punishment. Well, the deputies go to a house, and there's a mother and father arguing, and their 13-year-old is recording it with her cell phone. Well, the father grabs the cell phone and just grabs her arm, which he's allowed to do as a father under the corporal punishment law, and the 13-year-old called the deputies. The deputies arrest that dad.
Oh, no.
And put him in jail for injury to a child. I show up the next day, and the investigator tells me, I said, "You need to get him out of jail. That is not against the law. He has a right to discipline his child." And it's stuff like that gets really frustrating. Another example would be on a high-profile case. There's a family member that is really passionate about knowing everything about the case, and of course the rule is, as an investigator, you don't tell anybody anything unless it's necessary, because the integrity of that case is very, very important. And if it gets out, it could mess with the prosecution. And he basically, because I wouldn't tell this person what was going on, he instructs one of my investigators to
sheriff.
The sheriff does, to tell this person all the details of this investigation on a regular basis. And I'm thinking this case is destroyed because we can't do that. I don't care how much they get upset. We don't want them upset, but we can't tamper with the integrity of this case.
You have a case to solve.
Yeah. And so it's stuff like that you just it's just unbelievable.
So are there any more examples you can give me of things in the sheriff department that you saw that were maybe unethical or things that weren't quite right, maybe during COVID or whatever it may be?
Yeah, there's one example during the pandemic when it first broke loose. The governor had issued a order that you got to wear a mask and all this other stuff. It was pretty scary times because I'm thinking the Constitution allows us to do certain things. Why are we doing this? This seems illegal to have to wear a mask and do all these things. And had it not been for Matt Mills said, "Hey, I'm not taking the case if you file a case about someone not wearing a mask." People would have went to jail. I mean, because I seem to be the only one that was concerned. Hey, we don't need to put people in jail for not wearing a mask. That's not going to go over well in Hood County. If you want to do anything, write them a ticket and let a judge decide, but do not put somebody in jail for not wearing a mask. That's ridiculous.
And it was getting to that point.
It was getting bad. Mm-hmm. It was getting to that point. And another example would be we're a Second Amendment sanctuary county. Well, if that's so, then why on people who are suicidal, it's been a practice in the past when someone's suicidal, you take their guns to keep them from hurting themselves, which makes sense. But the courts ruled you can't do that unless you get a search warrant. Well, on several occasions, they're still taking guns without a search warrant. And it's different things that just is not, we need to do the right thing, and that's not happening.
Yeah, you've got, suicidal, you go to a house, I've been there in law enforcement, the guy has guns, which is fine, but if he's suicidal and he goes in for, mental treatment, mental app, things like that, it's really not that hard. You might have a little bit more labor-intensive, work to do, but you get a search warrant, you go in, and then when that person comes back out, they get their guns back.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a safety, more of a safety issue, and we can get into the red flag laws and things like that. But there are definitely people that do have mental issues that. Now, the process of that, getting your guns back, they should always get them back when they're clear.
Yes.
You're right. When it comes to that and taking some of these guns, you have to get a search warrant. Mm-hmm. So there's issues definitely going on in the county. And your individual issue with standing up first for the letter and then the Brady, I keep going back to the Brady decision, Maryland versus Brady. And that's been 1963. I mean, that's just a
long time.
Yeah. So this is something that isn't new that, in my opinion, is where the sheriff should have, instead of getting rid of you, he should have been thanking you for, that could have blown up in his face, and that would have given the sheriff's department a black eye. So I think you doing right and the loyalty, I don't know what the issue is with him. It's just kind of, it blows my mind on what's going on and how he's treating you and everybody else.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. He's a bully, like I said, and you can't treat people that way because he only does it to a few people. There's people down at the sheriff's office that have never seen him this way, and they would be shocked to know that he throws a fit or he smashes a chair or he smashes a paper tray. Because I was told by an employee that after he hung up the phone with me, that he smashed a chair, smashed a computer keyboard, and possibly broke some fingers. But I haven't confirmed that. But it's unbelievable that he thinks he can behave that way, and that's okay. That's not okay.
No.
For any workplace. Workplace violence is not acceptable.
And you can get into anger and anger management issues, but when you actually say that you're going to pull out a gun and shoot somebody, you got some issues right there.
Yeah, because you got a gun on your hip. He has a gun. It's imminent. In terroristic threat, it says imminent threat. Well, it's imminent. It's on his hip.
Yeah, you could be saying you're kidding around or whatever, but as a top law enforcement official, elected official in the county, that's unacceptable.
Yes, it is. And I don't know what it's going to take to the people who really know Roger and have some kind of influence on him. They need to help him get some mental health help, I believe, because his behavior is not right.
I hope he does get the help. I thank you for coming in and telling the people what your story is about the 28 years. My gosh, what you've probably been through here in Hood County and what you've done. And I commend you, Johnny, for coming in and speaking about this.
Appreciate that.
And speaking truth. And more than that, I commend you for putting God first.
Well, and since you mentioned that, I would like to pray before we end the
Yes.
show, and so we can honor God. God in heaven, we come to you, Jesus, and I ask that you help me through this testing. Help me to not lose my faith, and help me be strong and courageous. And I ask that you be with Roger, and God, if what he's doing is right, you bless him. But if what he is doing is wrong, you correct him. I'm going to leave it on you to deal with it. And I ask that you bless this county and this United States of America, and help us get on the right path in this country, and let your will be done. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And that's Johnny Rose, formerly of the Hood County Sheriff's Office. We appreciate you coming in, and blessings to you and your family.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.